This is a very quick response to dawahfilms, and in particular his latest video, The League of Irony. The video is over 14 minutes long. A link to it's in the description should you wish to watch it. I've selected a few excerpts from it which I'll address in this video. At about 1 minute into the video, he states,
"And the new excuse for me to talk about it is now the very prominent and very popular group called the League of Reason."
As I've previously addressed that issue, I'll deal with it in the description. Moving on. At about 1 minute 55, he states,
Scientism is this belief, basically, that the arbiter of all truth or knowledge is science.
Although I'm not familiar with the expression scientism, I would certainly deny that I have ever suggested that science is the arbiter of all truth and knowledge. At about 2 minutes 30, he states,
Science does not deal with value judgments, as much as many people may try to think this the case.
I completely agree with you, and nor do I know of any scientist that would disagree with you. In fact, this very topic came up in a discussion between Richard Dawkins and Tony Benn.
I tell you what really worries me about this. He's a scientist and I respect it, but scientists do nothing to give us moral guidance. Nothing. No, wait a minute. This is the key point. Yeah. Scientists can build atomic bombs, but don't advise you as to whether to use them or not. And I think the problem about the science, there's great arrogance about science. They claim they've explained the world. Absolutely right, but they don't tell us how to live.
No, that's true.
And that is the weakness of your position.
Science doesn't try to tell you how to live.
At about 5 minutes, he makes one of his more extraordinary claims.
Have this sort of chronological snobbery about them, saying things like, well, in the past people were less moral than we are today, when this is profoundly ignorant of history and human beings in general.
I genuinely don't know how to begin dealing with this, but I'll give a few examples of the ways in which I think we are in a more moral society than we were 2,000 years ago. Slavery, discrimination, emancipation. Now, I've already conceded that science has nothing to do with morality. But what I will point out is that the interpretation of your good book by some fundamentalists means that the public stoning to death of people still takes place. And before I get any criticism for this, let me make it absolutely clear, I am not suggesting that dawahfilms endorses this, but the fact remains that the public stoning to death of people still takes place under the name of religion. At about 5 minutes 40, he goes on to say,
we can define beauty as simply this reaction to the outside world through our perceptions of things and how our chemicals react and all this other stuff. But that totally robs the meaning of it. It totally robs beauty from us. It just defines things in this rigid, ugly, mechanical way. And scientism is all about robbing people of their humanity.
I actually find this statement really rather offensive. The idea that someone of a scientific background or makeup can't enjoy the wonders of the world is absolutely batshit crazy. I think the question has best been answered by Richard Feynman.
I have a friend who's an artist and has sometimes taken a view which I don't agree with very well. He'll hold up a flower and say, "Look how beautiful it is," and I'll agree, I think. And he says, you see, as I as an artist can see how beautiful this is, but you as a scientist, take this all apart and it becomes a dull thing. And I think that he's kind of nutty. First of all, the beauty that he sees is available to other people and to me too. I believe, although I may not be quite as refined as aesthetically as he is, that I can appreciate the beauty of a flower. At the same time, I see much more about the flower than he sees. I could imagine the cells in there, the complicated actions inside, which also have a beauty. I mean, it's not just beauty at this dimension of 1 centimeter. There's also beauty at a smaller dimensions. The inner structure, also the processes, the fact that the colors and the flower evolved in order to attract insects to pollinate it is interesting. It means that insects can see the color. It adds a question. Does this aesthetic sense also exist in the lower forms? Why is it aesthetic? All kinds of interesting questions which the science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower. It only adds. I don't understand how it subtracts.
I'd also suggest that you watch one of my videos in which I describe those things that move me: art, literature, nature. But it seems implicit in what you're saying that the idea of the workings of the mind should be off limits to science. If that was the case, that is to say, if, for example, we were not able to investigate the workings of the mind, what makes us happy? What's going on in our minds that makes us happy? What makes us unhappy? What causes us to feel depressed? If that hadn't been investigated, then we wouldn't have antidepressants, and the lives of millions of people would be much worse than they are now.
Now, the League of Reason is not only an example of this sort of ugly child of scientific fundamentalism, but it's also probably one of the greatest stories of irony, in the world. And what I mean by this is that they're an example of this new movement of atheism that is occurring in the world today, that is not only profoundly anti-religious, but acts just like the people that they oppose.
I've already commented about the League of Reason. See the description box below. But let me expand a little bit. The League of Reason is a website. The people that I suspect that you are trying to address, implicitly and in a few cases expressly, are probably those involved in the bi-monthly show run under that name. The views expressed in this video are mine and mine alone, but I suspect that I speak for all of those involved when I say this. I do not care one jot what you believe in, provided you do not do any of the following things. That is to say, firstly, that you seek to impose your religious morality on me. Secondly, that you do not spread disinformation, for example, the earth being 6,000 years old, and inhibit education. Thirdly, that you try to claim that you've got some sort of evidence for your particular flavour of God. Again, let me make it clear, I am not suggesting that you, dawahfilms, have done any of these things, but what I am saying is this. If you look at the videos of those who I believe you are probably seeking to address in your video, you will see that they are in response to one or all of those three factors, or at least the majority of them are. And that's why I can't agree with you when at 13 minutes into your video you say this.
What we're dealing with the League of Reason and other atheists who follow that sort of line of thought is not reason, it's not rationality, it's not science, it's simply cliches, it's simply labels to hide anti-religiosity. That's it.
Nor do I understand the somewhat poetic ending to your video.
They are not promoters of enlightenment. They are simply pawns to it.
I have already indicated the matters that are of concern to me. If I was provided with evidence of a God, I would change my mind. I wonder what, if any, evidence would make you change yours. Who is the dogmatic one here? I consider the words of Bertrand Russell to be an appropriate way to end the video. Thank you very much for watching.
Why are you not a Christian?
Because I see no evidence whatever for any of the Christian dogmas. I've examined all the stock arguments in favour of the existence of God, and none of them seem to me to be logically valid.
Do you think there's a practical reason for having a religious belief for many people?
Well, there can't be a practical reason for believing what isn't true. That's quite, at least I rule it out as impossible. Either the thing is true or it isn't. If it is true, you should believe it, and if it isn't, you shouldn't. And if you can't find out whether it's true or whether it isn't, you should suspend judgment. But you can't, it seems to me, a fundamental dishonesty and a fundamental treachery to intellectual integrity to hold a belief because you think it's useful and not because you think it's true.